I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation, the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe and the brand new civil lawsuit filed by his girlfriend, Karen Reed. Here's the story. Karen Reed's story has become one of the most polarizing legal battles in Massachusetts history. Prosecutors accused her of striking her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, with her SUV and leaving him to die in the snow. Allegations she fiercely denied throughout her high-profile criminal trials. Reed insists she was framed, pointing to what she believes is a cover-up inside the tight-knit Albert and McCabe households where John O'Keefe was found. Now, after walking out of the courtroom after being found not guilty by a jury, Karen is headed back to court, filing sweeping civil lawsuit against the Alberts and McCabes and investigators, accusing them of civil rights violations, conspiracy, and destroying evidence. How much more will be revealed about what happened the night John O'Keefe died? We have entered the next chapter of this case and the investigation into the death of John O'Keefe. And this is a significant difference now. We're in the civil world where there are a lot less restrictions on what sort of evidence can be gotten and how the world of discovery works. When I talk about discovery, I mean depositions, records, etc. So here you have Karen Reed and her defense team, and they have a brand new, not brand new, but they have a specific theory of what happened. And what's different here in the civil cases, they're the plaintiffs, which is like being the prosecution, but in the civil case, they're the ones making allegations here. They're the ones who have to prove the allegations to win. Not just raise a doubt. No, they've got to prove these allegations to win their case. So during the course of this hour, we're going to take a look specifically at what their theory is and what their allegations are against the people they are suing. The Alberts, the McCabes, and members of law enforcement. So let's begin. We're going to break it down piece by piece of this lawsuit, and we'll start with Karen Reed's version or theory on how her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, was killed. You're going to hear the actual words from the civil complaint read by one of our producers.
On the evening of January 28th, 2022, Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed went out for the night. There, they met up with a group of acquaintances, including Brian Albert, his wife Nicole Albert, Brian's brother Chris Albert, and his wife Julie, Jennifer McCabe, Nicole's sister and Brian's sister-in-law, her husband Matthew McCabe, and Brian Higgins. The group of acquaintances had several drinks and planned to continue the party back at the Alberts home in Canton at 34 Fairview Road. The House defendant Jennifer McCabe told John O'Keefe that he should come to the house. Ms. Reed and Mr. O'Keefe had never been to the house before January 29, 2022. They arrived in front of the Alberts home around 12:20 a.m. Ms. Reed was reluctant to attend the party for several reasons, including that she was unsure whether they were at the correct location and whether they were even welcome to the late-night party. Mr. O'Keefe got out of Ms. Reed's SUV and indicated that he would check out the party and report back to her. Mr. O'Keefe walked toward the front door garage area of the house and entered one of the two doors. A period of time passed without any word from Mr. O'Keefe. Ms. Reed, who was still hesitant to join, presumed that Mr. O'Keefe intended to stay, and therefore she left to go home without him. At some point after entering the house garage, Mr. O'Keefe was involved in a physical altercation, either inside the house or garage. During that altercation, the Alberts' German Shepherd attacked him, and Mr. O'Keefe sustained multiple dog bites and scratches on his right arm. He also suffered an incapacitating contrecoup wound on the back of his head. Mr. O'Keefe's head wound was caused by falling backward and striking a rigid surface. The Alberts garage contains such surfaces. By contrast, the head wound could not have been caused by a vehicle strike or falling backward onto a flat, cold lawn like the Alberts. Because of their knowledge of criminal investigations, the Alberts, the McCabe's, and Higgins, house defendants, knew that calling for medical care to help save Mr. O'Keefe's life would trigger immediate and irreversible risk of their own criminal exposure. Therefore, at least the 5 of them agreed on a simple plan to exonerate themselves and implicate Ms. Reed. They would tell anyone who inquired Mr. O'Keefe never entered the house and hide evidence that he was there, including his body. Sometime during the night, they repositioned a Ford Edge vehicle at a spot adjacent to the front lawn, which obscured the view of that area of the lawn from potential passers-by. At some point further in the night, they carried or dragged Mr. O'Keefe's body to that same area in the yard, close to where one or more of them later claimed Ms. Reed dropped off Mr. O'Keefe earlier that night. The plan was devised to make it appear that Mr. O'Keefe had been struck by Ms. Reed's vehicle and then died as a result of exposure to the cold. Mr. O'Keefe was either dead when the house defendants left him on the Alberts lawn, or he died shortly thereafter.
This is a very specific story and brings us to the first question in our investigation. Does the evidence support this theory of how John O'Keefe was killed? There have been 2 trials already, and a lot of evidence that's come out that didn't even get into the trial as well. Here to help answer that question, we've got journalist, host of the new YouTube series, Something's Off. Rebecca Lavoie is with us, and YouTuber and author of Storm of Suspicion, the Karen Reed Trials, Kevin Lenahan. Kevin, you're going to have to add another chapter after this 3rd trial to your book. All right, let's go at it. Rebecca, what do you think? Does the evidence support this very specific theory of what happened to John O'Keefe?
Well, as you said, we haven't seen all the evidence yet. There was a tremendous amount of evidence that was suppressed by Judge Beverly Cannoni, who, by the way, just signed an order to make public the many sidebars, except for ones involving jurors in the trial. So we're going to learn more, I think, very soon about conversations at the stand about what we weren't allowed to see, medical evidence, testing done at the house and in the garage by the defense team, more dog bite testimony, more medical testimony from other experts. I think that there is a lot there. What we know is that he was not hit by a car. No doctor will actually say that he was hit by a car and his injuries match that, including the medical examiner. And we know that he has wounds on his arm that are dog bites and scratches. So, what we have here is much closer, I think, to what the prosecution said during trial, which was that she hit him with his car.
Kevin, what do you think about the evidence? Does it support this theory?
The theory is impossible based on all of the evidence. Instead of just stitching together little bits and pieces here that kind of fit a loose fictional narrative. Look, as they were a block away, and Karen did a 3-point turn. 8 minutes and 4 seconds after that, she put the car into reverse at high speed, and that's a few seconds after that is the exact same time that John's phone shows that he stopped moving. Just a few seconds after that. So we have this down to within a few seconds exactly what time this happened. In addition to that, the GPS shows that as Karen is driving and arriving at the house, she never comes to a stop until she reaches a flagpole. They just slow down, and she slowly drives to the flagpole. But yet now she wants us to believe that she dropped John off and he got out in the driveway and walked into the house. It couldn't have happened. GPS showed it couldn't have happened because she didn't stop. She's changed her stories numerous times. The only reason she's suing now is because she's been already sued. So she's going to be forced to answer her questions under deposition, under oath. And we're going to see she's going to be confronted for the first time by the many lies that she's been told. The many times she's changed her story. She told that she, out front when she parked and John went in, she first told the story that she called and texted John numerous times from the street. Now, that's not in this new argument here because the phone records show that she didn't text or phone anybody at that time. So this is the truth. We may not have all the truth ever, but we have enough here to know what happened.
Rebecca, your thoughts about Kevin's view of the evidence?
Yeah, I think it's kind of ironic that we would talk about cherry-picking evidence when we're talking about greatly disputed digital evidence that was sort of worked backward into a timeline multiple times by the prosecution. I do not think that the key cycle evidence, the GPS evidence, the timing evidence has in any way been thoroughly proven. We've got experts saying they mean different things. We do know that John O'Keefe had a head wound from hitting something either sharp or ridged on the back of his head. We do know that he had no broken bones, no bruising below the neck. We know that he did not die of hypothermia. And when I think about what a jury in a civil trial considers, they consider the what's more likely. And what is more likely? That somebody with no bruises, no broken bones, no hypothermia died by being hit by a car, or that somebody with a head wound and other indications of a tussle, including dog bites, died in a different way. And I think it's pretty clear which way I would go if I were a juror.
Kevin, do you think this is going to turn into a battle of the theories again versus just refuting a theory, right? Because now you've got the Alberts and law enforcement. They're the ones being accused, right? So they don't have to necessarily prove anything. They may have a cross complaint here that they may have to prove at some point. But for these particular allegations, they don't have to prove it necessarily, but they've got to show that it doesn't make sense. Do you think part of what they'll do is kind of redo the prosecution, what they laid out in terms of what happened to John O'Keefe?
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be, in terms of the public, and this is, I think, why Karen has filed this now, is she's always trying to win the narrative over, and that's proven to be smart. The public tends to look at the odd things and try to get an explanation for them instead of looking at the fundamental evidence. That's what Rebecca just did here. The fundamental evidence hasn't changed since the first trial when it comes to the GPS data. It's not really in dispute, and you're not really finding any experts nationally that are saying those are dog bites. So in a trial, defense teams have a way of finding people that they can pull forward for one reason or another. I think the public is going to continue to seize on whatever works for them, and you're going to see this on YouTubers that are going to, whatever gets the most views, they're going to sell that version of the story. And I don't know Rebecca's channel, but she's probably going to do the same thing.
Okay, both guests staying with us. We're out of time for that segment. We've got another one coming up next. Does the evidence support the allegations of collusion?
His case was corrupted from the start. It was corrupted by biases, conflicts, and personal loyalties.
Sunday nights on Court TV. Join us for a night of food, friends, and our favorite legal dramas. It's Order in the Court. And this week,
I'm Dr. Jason Bull. I study a jury's behavioral patterns. Not guilty, thank you. The verdict you get depends on me. You don't get a name like Bull because you give up before the game is over.
we're binge-watching Bull. Sunday starting at 6, 5 Central on Court TV.
Murder in the second degree. What say you? Is the defendant at the bar guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Is the defendant not guilty or guilty?
Not
So say you, Mr. Foreman? So say you all? Jurors, hearken with me.
That was a moment. I'll never forget it. I was outside there with everyone else waiting to hear what that jury was going to say. And to have that type of reaction and this whole case so different, right? You have hundreds and hundreds of people showing up for someone accused of murdering a police officer and cheering when the words "not guilty" were uttered. I mean, I don't think I'll ever see anything like that ever again. But now we've got the civil case, and now it's Karen Reed making specific allegations. And one of the allegations involves the conspiracy and the collusion among the people in the House and law enforcement. Again, you're going to take a listen to our producer Reed from the actual complaint, the civil complaint filed by Karen Reed. Take a listen.
Proctor and his colleagues did not search the house for blood evidence resulting from the gash to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head, or for fingerprints, or for DNA evidence. Proctor did not search the house, despite the fact that Mr. O'Keefe was discovered without a winter coat, without the hat that several witnesses said he had been wearing that night, and without his left shoe. At Proctor's direction, the house was never processed by a criminalist or even photographed. No member of the MSP, including Proctor, set foot inside 34 Fairview for nearly a week. The police did not examine or take evidence from the Albert's German Shepherd that was in the house on January 29th, a dog that had a history of attacking other dogs and people. Brian Higgins and Brian Albert continued to coordinate their stories by calling each other multiple times in the early morning hours and ultimately spoke with each other on their cell phones at 2:22 a.m. Later, both Brian Albert and Higgins denied the existence of these phone calls. They coordinated the exact same lie, falsely claiming the multiple calls and answers were just butt dials. However, 5 minutes after the Higgins-Albert call, Jennifer McCabe performed a Google search on her phone at 2:27 a.m. House longed to die in cold, misspelling the first word. Neither Proctor nor any of the MSP troopers conducted physical examinations of the House defendants for evidence of involvement in the altercation, such as marks on their hands, knuckles, or face, or bruises on their bodies. They did not seize or search the House defendants' phones. They conducted only perfunctory, unrecorded conversations with Proctor's friends and acquaintances without any attempt to coordinate their stories. They permitted would-be witnesses to communicate with each other and coordinate their stories before any formal interviews. Specifically, Jennifer McCabe became the point person for the House defendants in providing their false narrative to investigators. She managed and communicated details about the House defendants' messaging and the investigation itself, including visiting Proctor's and other investigators' private residences, mapping out timelines to coordinate statements with other witnesses, leading group text message chains that were later partially deleted, and planning private meetings at all hours of the day and night. Indeed, these were never the acts of innocent witnesses seeking to help an investigation concerning the death of an alleged friend. Rather, they were predicate acts of a conspiracy among a group of people with a shared goal of deflecting their criminal exposure onto someone else.
That brings us to the next question in our investigation. It's about this alleged collusion. Does the evidence support these allegations of collusion? Right? It's not just an allegation that John O'Keefe was killed in the house, but everyone in the house is then covering it up, colluding with one another, getting their story straight, and creating a new story. Still with us, helping us with our investigation, journalist, host of the new YouTube series, Something's Off, Rebecca Lavoie, and YouTuber, author of Storm of Suspicion, The Karen Reed Trials, Kevin Lenahan. All right, Rebecca, what are your thoughts now about the evidence and these allegations of conspiring and colluding?
Listen, the words conspiracy theory are a great rhetorical trap because when you hear conspiracy initially, you think of things like UFOs, tinfoil hats, the government controlling the weather. But what a conspiracy actually is people getting together and deciding to do something, and in this case, likely deciding to protect themselves. Now, I don't think necessarily that what's going on with the cops in Proctor is tied up with whatever went on with these folks. We have now evidence, given that his texts and so forth are going to be affecting 19 cases, that he is likely the kind of cop who like to put his thumb on the scales and would have followed the easiest path to a solution. What we do have here, though, are people that you're showing on the screen right now who we watched lie on the stand about their actions that night, about their actions in subsequent days. They threw away their phones after finding out that their phones were going to be preserved as a result of the defense request. This is not one or two cherry-picked things. This is a mountain of things, a lot of lies, a lot of misdirection, and a lot of kind of trying to control the narrative in a way that is aggressive and very, very clear and does point to collusion, as you said.
Kevin, your thoughts about the evidence and how it relates to these allegations of conspiracy, collusion, cover-up, framing?
You know, I spent the summer of 2023 trying to look into this as, you know, certainly as an amateur, and I was on the fence. You know, I really kind of started out maybe even leaning towards something maybe happened inside the house. And what really flipped it for me was, and it took me 3 months to get there of trying to get to all the evidence, was finding out where Karen's Lexus was all day and finding out what time the police started finding the main pieces and where they were. And once you learn that, you realize there was simply no time or opportunity to tamper with that vehicle and plant evidence. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but there just wasn't. And once you realize that, then there's no way there could be a conspiracy. Even if Michael Proctor wanted to plant evidence, he had no opportunity to do so. And so it's hard to imagine any other explanation, especially once then you get the pieces of the taillight that match perfectly to Karen's vehicle. So I'm kind of
How about the conversations, though? The
lawyers,
conversations, the butt dials, the destroyed phones.
Oh, what conversations? I don't know what we
the butt dials.
Brian Albert
I said conversations.
But
I said conversations / butt dials. Depends on your perspective, right?
Right. So there was a very brief exchange of calls from Brian Higgins' house that lasted a matter of seconds. Not long enough for a conversation. But most of the other stuff that we're mentioning, we don't even know what that was. They're calling that coordinating. Brian Higgins making a phone call from outside the Canton police station. That's coordinating. We don't even know who he was calling. He could have been checking his voicemail. I mean, we have no evidence that he called Brian Albert or coordinated with anybody. Most of that stuff in there is just speculative and some of it beyond speculative.
Rebecca, what are your thoughts? Does it go beyond, or is it taking evidence and then extrapolating a little bit too far, or do you think it's on point here?
Well, the bottom line is, whatever they talked about, they lied about having those conversations until they were caught in their lie because of what was revealed in federal documents. When multiple people lie about the same things, in this case, we're talking about phone calls, we're talking about texts, we're talking about things that were deliberately deleted or destroyed and put in separate dumpsters in a military base. We're talking about a group of people who decided to not tell the truth until there was no opportunity or no choice but to tell the truth, or at least tell some version of the truth. I think it is absolutely very interesting. And one thing I want to address that Kevin said is that, you know, Proctor lied about the time that he picked up Karen's car in his report. Or he made a mistake or lied for many, many, many months, once again, until he was caught with video footage from Karen Reed's parents' house, which showed the time being very different, which did actually give him time once the car was in Canton, or give somebody time to tamper with the car. So there's all these little narrative things out there that, again, on their own just seem kind of silly, speculative. It's the combination of them that provides that preponderance of evidence. And for me, it is the lack of veracity of the testimony of these folks in front of the grand jury, lying to the FBI, lying on the stand in both of the trials until the truth came out and they had no choice. That, to me, is what points me in the opposite direction of Kevin.
Kevin, 15 seconds. I'll give you the final word.
Again, it's pulling together things that have ordinary explanations, like the phone that was destroyed at a military base. It was just thrown out with the garbage on an area where they have no town trash pickup. On and on. Everything she said has normal, mundane explanations, but she doesn't look for them.
Rebecca Lavoie, Kevin Lenahan, great to have you both here. Appreciate it. We'll be talking a lot about this. Still to come, does the evidence support the allegations that Karen Reed was framed? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe. Now, the woman found not guilty of his murder has brought formal allegations against the people she says are actually responsible. Here's the story. The death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe and the explosive charges against his girlfriend Karen Reed became one of the most polarizing criminal trials of the century. Prosecutors said Reed struck O'Keefe with her SUV and left him to die in the snow. Reed insists she was being framed, pointing directly at members of the powerful Albert and McCabe families, alleging a cover-up happened inside that Canton home. Her criminal trial ended with a shocking not guilty verdict. Now Reed is firing back with a massive civil lawsuit, accusing those same families and law enforcement of conspiracy, civil rights violations, and planting false evidence. As she battles for her reputation, the fight between Karen Reed and the tight-knit Canton inner circle is entering its most explosive phase yet. Now, Karen Reed is not just saying that she was wrongfully prosecuted, right? That I was an innocent person and I was accused of something I didn't do. She's claiming she was actually framed by law enforcement and people in that house for the murder of John O'Keefe. Again, we're going through the civil complaint filed by Karen Reed, and now you'll hear our producer read another section of it, this part dealing with the allegations that Karen Reed was framed, that evidence was planted to make it look like she was the killer.
By approximately 2:30 p.m. on January 29th, before he had even met or interviewed Ms. Reed or seen her Lexus SUV, Trooper Michael Proctor had already ordered seizure of the vehicle at her parents' home in Dighton. By 4:17 p.m., the vehicle was in MSP's physical possession. Reports shared by the Dighton Police Department in 2023 reveal that the Lexus was towed from Dighton at 4:17 p.m. Proctor's assertion that he seized it at 5:30 p.m. was intentionally false to hide the fact that the car was in police custody for 73 minutes longer than indicated in his sworn affidavits. Proctor maintained that false narrative because it would hide the exact time frame when he had the opportunity to remove pieces of the taillight from Ms. Reed's vehicle and bring them back to the house so that he could later claim the pieces had been there since approximately 12:30 a.m. on January 29th. However, unbeknownst to him, driveway video from the Reed residence in Dighton and a report written by the Dighton police revealed Proctor's lie and revealed the true and accurate time the Lexus SUV came into MSP's possession. One or more of them destroyed the taillight, secretly took pieces of it into their possession, and then planted some of them in various places at 34 Fairview and on Mr. O'Keefe's clothes. Proctor also planted pieces of glass on the bumper of Ms. Reed's SUV while it was in his possession at the CPD Sallyport garage, which he then claimed to have recovered later on February 1st. Proctor planted this evidence to make it look like these shards originated from a cocktail glass that Mr. O'Keefe was holding when he exited the Waterfall bar. Evidently, Proctor did not plan on Karen Reed's defense attorneys insisting on forensic testing of the glass shards, which showed that they did not match the cocktail glass in Mr. O'Keefe's possession. In fact, the 5 glass pieces originated from multiple different sources. One shard of glass on the bumper did match another piece of glass that had been in Proctor's possession during the investigation. The only way for the glass to have ended up on the SUV bumper is that Proctor planted it there in an attempt to connect the vehicle to the death of Mr. O'Keefe.
And let's get to the next question in our investigation. This is the one that I think made this trial what it was, right? This wasn't someone saying, I'm just not guilty. This is someone saying they were framed. Does the evidence support these allegations that Karen Reed was framed? Again, not just that they're covering up their own behavior, not just an allegation that they're doing that, an allegation that they're covering up their own behavior and then framing someone else for a murder that she didn't commit. That is the allegation they're making, folks. All right, here to help answer that question, registered nurse Kim Whalen. She's also known as Nurse Kim on TikTok and YouTube. And Margaret McLean, former prosecutor, host of the podcast, It's a Crime with Margaret McLean. Great to have you both here. All right, Kim, what are your thoughts? Does the evidence support these allegations of Karen being framed?
It sure does, Vinny. And I think it always has. There has been a huge swelling of information post-trial coming out regarding Michael Proctor and some additional information of his behavior and conduct in additional extractions of his cell phone. I don't believe that this happened overnight, but I believe that Karen Read is the catalyst that will show what was done in the dark in Canton on January 29th, 2022 will come to light in this civil suit. And I especially go back to that embedded glass that they stated was in her Lexus SUV in that bumper. And it was never that. It was reported as that by Proctor, but those 5 shards were found and they didn't match any of the cocktail glasses. And then you go back and think of the initial investigation by Canton PD while it was light out, because we had video of the Canton police doing the layer by layer with the leaf blower, and it was light out. No red or clear plastic was found. It was always a frame job.
Margaret McLean, does the evidence support the allegations that Karen Read was framed?
So I want to go back to basics, and according to the law, remember, Karen Read, the plaintiff, has to prove her case. And the evidence can't be, it's direct evidence or circumstantial evidence, but it can't be based on conjecture, guesswork, or theories. So if you really look at that and analyze it, there's no supporting evidence of where that glass came from. There's no supporting evidence that Proctor actually planted that, any shards. There's no photographs of it. There's no direct testimony, not even circumstantial evidence. There's no evidence that Karen was framed. And there's also no evidence that a fight took place inside the house with all these people as witnesses. We have, remember, testimony from Ian Whiffen where there was a little circle where maybe O'Keefe was in the garage for all of 3 seconds, but how could he have been pummeled, as the civil complaint says? We have to go back to the basics of the law, that she has to prove her case by a preponderance of the evidence. So again, the facts must be supported. And we can't go on all these theories and conjecture, because that's in the dog bites, another thing that was in the complaint. That's another theory that's not supported by direct or circumstantial evidence.
Kim, I'll give you an opportunity to respond to the allegation that the evidence is merely conjecture.
Yeah, I don't see it as that. I also see us as having a time frame in the Sally Port that video was never produced, and it was hidden, and it came out in dribs and drabs. And you do see Michael Proctor at the back of that right rear taillight that was sold to the Commonwealth and to all of us at home and to that jury, that it was the driver's side, but it really was the exact reverse. And it was Proctor standing at the right rear taillight when it was in that Sally Port. I think that all roads lead to Michael Proctor on this one.
Margaret, and where is the line for you between conjecture and circumstantial evidence? I mean, most murders that we cover here on Court TV, there's no video of the murder. There's no picture of it. Most times there's no eyewitness to it. So prosecutors routinely put things together. So in this case, Karen Read and her team have to sort of act as prosecutors in proving their allegations.
Right, exactly. But circumstantial evidence, it's got to be pieced together, and a jury can't, the judge will explain in the jury instructions, it can't be, again, it might be weird that Proctor was like kind of seen near the car, but what does it really prove? And it might be weird or not great that Sally Port video was produced in dribs and drabs, but what does that prove? So I'm going back to, there's weird things, but you've got to look at the evidence and what supports her facts in every single count of the civil case. And I, we don't like Proctor. I'll agree we don't like Proctor. There might be something to that, like one of those charges, but I can't see this, big conspiracy in the house with the dog and the McCabe's and the Alberts and the Higgins and back to the phone. So they threw away the phone in a dumpster. But again, what does that really prove? She has to prove her case by a preponderance of the evidence. It can't, and that's above, it's 51% and above. If it's 50-50, we're not really sure what happened to John O'Keefe, then it would be a loss, or it, goes to the defense.
All right, Margaret McLean, Kim Whalen staying with us. When we come back, and this is an important one, this is what I'm hoping for. Will the truth be revealed?
There was no collision. There was no collision. There was no collision.
You have to punish him? You have to kill him for a few $100?
You don't touch fire and expect not to get burned. My goal is to embarrass you. My goal is to make you suffer. My goal is for pain. Make sure that you remember me for the rest of your life.
You weren't feeling any sympathy.
If I'm being honest now.
You kill a man for acting like a junkie when you're the one turned him into a junkie.
Interview with a Killer season finale, Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on Court TV.
All right. She's been freed. Karen Reed has been freed, okay? There's jeopardy has attached. She can't be tried for the murder of John O'Keefe again. She was found not guilty by the jury. But in the end, that doesn't really settle the issue of exactly what happened to John O'Keefe. Like, it hasn't been determined in any courtroom what happened to John O'Keefe. Well, now here we're in a civil case. And in a civil case, the rules are a little different. Discovery rules a little bit more expansive, so people will have to testify and be deposed and talk about things that were restricted and not part of the criminal case for whatever reason. And this is on both sides, right? So Karen Reed will be compelled to testify as well if, in fact, she could be called by the other side. She'll be deposed by the other side, as will all the people that she's suing. That's the way civil cases work. So this is much different. This civil case also seems to be a little bit personal at this point as well. Karen Reed versus the people in the House and law enforcement, and them versus her. It's not the state. This is personal. So what I want to do for you now is there have been statements released by Alan Jackson and by we refer to them as the House defendants, the people who were in the House that night who were being sued by Karen Reed. So first, I want you to take a listen to our producer reading Alan Jackson's statement.
Today's filing speaks for itself. It is a meticulously documented civil action grounded in evidence, law, and the Constitution. For more than 3 years, Karen Reed was dragged through a baseless criminal prosecution engineered by individuals who abused their authority, manipulated the investigative process, and trampled her rights. Our complaint lays out in stark detail the malicious prosecution, the conspiracy, the civil rights violations, and the intentional misconduct that these defendants visited upon an innocent woman. If these defendants want to answer for that under oath, we welcome it. What we will not do is legitimize a threat to file some imaginary defamation case. That threat is nothing more than a desperate attempt by these defendants to distract the public from the very real legal jeopardy they now face. When people start waving around defamation claims to mask their own legal troubles, it tells you everything you need to know. They don't want sunlight, they want silence.
Now, here is Jim Tuxbury's statement. He's the attorney representing the Alberts, the McCabes, and John Higgins.
The allegations made by Karen Reed are entirely false, defamatory, and without merit. Our clients categorically deny each and every claim. This lawsuit is nothing more than a continuation of a baseless conspiracy narrative that has caused significant harm to the reputations and lives of innocent people. Our clients acted responsibly, fulfilling their civic duty as witnesses, and have participated appropriately in the legal process from the outset. Ms. Reed's claims distort the facts, misrepresent the evidence, and target private citizens in an attempt to deflect blame.
And that brings us to the final question in our investigation, which is, will the truth be revealed through this civil litigation? Still with us, Nurse Kim and Margaret McLean. Margaret McLean, your thoughts. Will we get closer to the truth now, with everyone having to testify and be deposed and get records that we didn't get before?
Well, we may have some aha moments. We'll have to wait and see. However, with this case, it's the most unique case I've ever analyzed. And I think truth is in the eyes of the beholder. So what I believe to be true, based on the facts and the evidence, Kim may think the opposite, and her truth might be opposite of my truth. And, in the long run, there may be some big aha moment, but if not much more comes out than what we already know, again, it goes back to a very polarizing case, as you guys mentioned in your opening.
I didn't just mention it. We lived it, Margaret. We lived it. Before we run out of time,
we did.
I want to bring in Nurse Kim. Nurse Kim, do you believe the records that will be exposed and some of the testimony and the areas of the testimony that will be compelled, do you think we'll get the truth this time around?
I'm hopeful, Vinnie, that we will, because in the end, for the O'Keefe family and for Karen Reed, I think that is the best to give that piece to the O'Keefe family and to the Reeds. I do not know if we will get that, but if there are different rules and we are able to get additional discovery and things that were not allowed to go in front of a jury in a criminal trial, perhaps there would be that final aha that gives that piece to the O'Keefes.
So in about 20 seconds, Margaret McLean, the fact that Karen Reed will, the other side wants her to testify, she'll have to testify. Does that change anything here?
Yes, she will. I don't think it'll change too much. I think she'll be prepped for her deposition. It'll take a long time. Remember, it's a civil case, so there's going to be loads and loads of depositions. And I did civil defense work, so this will drag on forever. But she will be prepped, as will the other side. So, again, I don't think she's going to suddenly say, "Oh, I really hit him," and no. But will the truth? Unless somebody in the House suddenly flips and says, "You know what? We were all in on a conspiracy." Now that would make it interesting for sure.
All right, we are out of time, unfortunately. Kim Whalen, thank you so much. Nurse Kim, Margaret McLean, thank you. It's a Crime with Margaret McLean. Nurse Kim, TikTok, YouTube, check them out. All right, almost all the time, civil cases are about money. They almost always end in settlements. That's because a large portion of civil litigation, insurance companies are the ones making the decisions. I think this case is different. This is personal on both sides of the lawsuit. And I have a hard time believing that either side will bend or compromise, which means we may very well have a third Karen Reed trial. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.